When I first became a pastor, I remember hearing somebody spout off the Ten Commandments like they were just came so natural. And I remember as a pastor thinking, I should be able to do that. I couldn't do it. I didn't know how. So I want to share with you how I learned to memorize the Ten Commandments. It was very easy. It stuck, and never failed me. And so I want to show you how I remember them, and it becomes very valuable in just my studies also. So this is what I want to do, is just help bring the Bible to life. This is one of the ways. I'm Pastor Doug Ford, Calvary Chapel, Sweetwater. Memorizing Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments are in Exodus 20 if you've never been there. And obviously you want to be, first of all, familiar with the commandments and what they mean. And so I'll link the Ten Commandment study to this video and vice versa, because it's important to understand those commandments in the context of how they're presented in the Bible and what they mean to us in our day. And so, but how to memorize them, I struggled with it, sort of like many people early on. I remember just doing the repetitive thing, just repeat. The problem with that is if you don't repeat it again, you eventually would forget it. So, you become limited to the time you commit to repeating those things. And I'm always a very visual person when I teach the Bible. I see the Bible. I see what's going on. I see the characters. I see the setting, the place. And it's one of the things I do when I study the Bible is that it becomes very visual to me. And I want to teach it in a visual way, because we remember visual things much better than we just remember words and sentences. Unless those words and sentences are attached to something in our life. We learn this with music. When we hear a song in an emotional moment in a time, and so the song that was played at our wedding, we remember that song. The song that was on our hearts when a loved one passed away. A song that we were singing, whether a worship song or something, in a special moment in our life. When that song plays, it does something, and it brings back all those pictures and all those memories. Those pictures, those memories are tied to those words. And of course, music is a different category all its own. So if we can tie these and make something visual of the Ten Commandments, link it to your life, something that then it's going to stick with you. So what I did is I take the Ten Commandments, and something very familiar to me, something that's very personal to me, was when I grew up going to stay at my grandparents on the farm. Spending the night there was an exciting thing for us kids, and when we went there. And so the house, the big farmhouse was like an adventure to us as small kids. And so I took the Ten Commandments and I attached them to the farmhouse. And as I walk through the farmhouse, I can see it in my mind going from room to room. And then as I arrive at the farmhouse, I attach a commandment to the very familiar places. When you attach the words to something that's very familiar, but you also do something odd with the picture, the stranger it is, the more you remember it. I think you'll see a little bit of that when I have some trouble. I made it very strange, maybe is not the best word, but something very out of place. And so I start off with the first commandment: you shall have no other gods before me. When I arrived at my grandma and grandpa's house, there was a gate that they would pull through their car as they pulled up to the house, what they would call their driveway. But the farmhouse had a large driveway. To get to the house, you passed through these, the fence, this gate of the fence, and you got onto the sidewalk. And that was sort of the gate. You shall have no other gods before me. And I learned this first commandment as the gateway commandment, that if you can't get past this, there was no reason to go any further, that you really need to linger at the first commandment. There are no other gods before God. He is not like any other God. He is high and holy, the creator, the sustainer of all things, and that all other gods are not gods in relation to him. And so, you shall have no other gods before me is that gatekeeper commandment. I attach it to that gate of the farmhouse. And so to pass through that gate is to pass through that commandment that there is no other God besides our God. As you approach the house, there was a huge tree right at the entrance to the house, the farmhouse. And this tree was the kind that had the roots that came out and that was buckling the sidewalk, and it had a very low fork. And so as kids, we'd always run up to that tree and jump up into that fork. And that tree was just a playground to us as kids. So that tree is very personal to me. There's a lot of probably scratches and scars. I left a lot of DNA on that tree. And so that tree is something very memorable to me. And so I attached the second commandment that you should not have a graven image. I picture an image carved into the side of that tree. As I came up to the farmhouse, you couldn't help but looking at this tree. It was right in front of you. You'd stumble over the roots, just pushing the sidewalk up if you weren't careful. And so you shall not make for yourself any graven image. So I'd picture this image carved into the tree, the second commandment. And then as you went past the tree and you went into the farmhouse, there was like a porch there. And there was always stuff on the porch, and Grandma did her canning out there. She had the big jars of jars where she was making pickles, and there was always preserves and things that are on the table out there. And so it was a place where there was lots of things. And I picture a weather vane on the table, a weather vane. And the commandment then is that you shall not take the Lord thy God, the name of the Lord thy God in vain is kind of the way I learned the commandment in the NIV. It is, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And so to take the name of the Lord in vain, I pictured a weather vane, a play on that word. And that picture of a weather vane sitting on that very familiar table in that very familiar place that I walked through hundreds of times as a kid gets me to the third commandment. When I get to the fourth commandment, then I get to remember the Sabbath day. And I remember this commandment because when I walk into the kitchen, there is a Saab car. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Saab, I think, is the way it's spelled. A black sports car, a Saab. And a strange picture. Why that car? Why in the kitchen? Because it's memorable. And it gets me started with that word. That Saab reminds me of Sabbath. And this car is full of holes. It's been shot up. And so I remember the Sabbath, and it's holy, and that's the way I remember that. And so it's something very out of place in a very familiar place of the kitchen of the farmhouse. You entered into the kitchen of my grandma and grandpa's farmhouse. And so you see this car, it's all shot full of holes. It's the Sabbath, keep it holy. As you walked from the kitchen, there was a little room off to the left, and it was actually just like a washroom. It just had a sink in it, and you could step in there and wash your hands before dinner. It was just a little room off to the side with a sink. And I picture the back of that room. I picture my parents as a judge, both of them judge with white wigs and black robes. And the commandment, then the fifth commandment, is to honor your father and mother. And so I picture my father and mother as the judges. Yes, Your Honor. And picture them in a courtroom setting in the back of this room as they are the judges. And I'm saying, yes, Your Honor, I honor my father and mother. And this is the commandment with a promise attached to it that you're going to live long in the land. And very important commandment, the fifth commandment. And so it was just a couple steps from the Sabbath to see this room and see my parents off to the back of that room. Remember to honor my father and mother. And then let's take a couple more steps, and there was another room that was sort of a round, what we called kind of thought of as the round room. I guess it had several rooms attached to it. It was kind of a family room type setting, had a couch, and when we stayed there, the couch would fold out, and this would became, the sort of makeshift bedroom when we were staying overnight. And so it was a pretty good sized room, and I picture this room with swords and shields and spears and bows and arrows hanging all over the wall. A room of war, a room. I picture this room as a room associated with that. But the commandment then is attached to something that's of war is just, you shall not commit murder, that you shall not murder. And so tools associated with that some would associate with murder is what I picture, that this room are the tools, but you should never use those for murder. You shall not murder. And so I go from into that room, seeing this picture again of something a little out of place in a very familiar room to me. And so you should not commit murder. As I step from that room, going towards the front room, the living room, off to one side, there's a little bedroom. And that little bedroom, as I look in, you couldn't help as you walked by to if you looked in that bedroom, very small room, there was a bed right there, very visible. And so that reminds me, you shall not commit adultery. And so then I step into just like 2 steps, and then you're into the living room. But the living room is then divided in half. And so the front is a place that you would pass in front of a row of bars with a doors. It was a like prison cell, and inside the prison cell was this person dressed in stripes, and he was very clearly a burglar that had been caught. And so the commandment is, thou shalt not steal. So as you step from this bedroom, you should not commit adultery. Into the living room, you see bars, a thief behind bars, thou shalt not steal. As you go through there, off to the side was my grandparents' bedroom. If you stepped into the bedroom, I saw a bear, a big old grizzly bear, in the corner of that. And you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And so the commandment in the NIV is, you should not give false testimony. You should not lie. And so you should not lie. You should not bear false witness. So I picture a bear in the bedroom, very familiar setting, Grandma and Grandpa's bedroom, something very out of place there. It makes it very easy to remember. I see a bear in the corner as you enter into that room. You imagine the shock of entering a room and seeing a bear. And then you could go out the bedroom and step off into the porch. There was a front porch, a porch swing on that front porch. And this is a very old farmhouse, and there were shade trees everywhere. Something very memorable. Took lots of naps as little kids, played on that porch swing. I saw Grandpa take lots of naps on that porch swing. Breeze was always blowing through, it seemed like. And but from that porch swing, you could see there was a lot of neighbors on the farm, but you could see across the street. You could see down the road both ways, and you could see what neighbors there were, and you could see what was going on. But that reminds me that you shall not covet, to sit on there and view everything out into the world, to view what was going on, that you shall not covet your neighbor's home, covet your neighbor's wife, and so forth, that you wouldn't look out to the world to look out to the neighbors and covet what they have. And so that's how I remember the 10 Commandments. I walk through the gate, thou shalt have no other gods before me. I walk to the tree, I see the tree that has this God carved into it, and that you should not create a graven image and worship any graven image. You would step onto the porch and not take the name of the Lord that God in vain. I stepped into the kitchen, remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy. I see off to the side my parents, to honor your father and mother. I stepped into this main part of the house, and I see weapons that could be used to murder, and it's thou shalt not murder. I see a bedroom, thou shalt not commit adultery. I see a man behind bars in the living room, thou shalt not steal. I see a bear in the bedroom, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And I step onto the porch, see the world, see the neighbors, and say, thou shalt not covet. And so you take, could be your own home, the home you grew up in, your neighborhood, the streets you drive down. You know, anything that you could sort of section off into very memorable rooms. You need 10 rooms. You need 10 memorable places, 10 different things like that you could attach this picture. And I remember taking a list of things, and one of the things on the list that has stuck with me was the very beginning was a jar of pickles. Well, I put a jar of pickles in the mailbox. Well, nobody ever sees a jar of pickles in the mailbox, but I still, in my mind, see a jar of pickles in the mailbox. And as this list that I memorized would go up to my previous house, and I would see all these things through the house, and it helped you remember a list of things. And so this is easy to do with any list. And all you have to do is find that familiar place that's very visual to you. Put something strange. The stranger it is, the more out of place it is, the easier it is for you to remember. And this is how you can memorize the 10 Commandments. This is how you can memorize even Bible verses, that you can associate that Bible verse with a picture, and it helps you even to remember Bible verses. So think about that as you're doing your Bible study. These things that you don't want to forget, things that are important to you, and think about how can I make that visual and associate it with something very familiar to me. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it, and good luck with memorizing the 10 Commandments, and I hope you can see them in your mind. I hope this helps you bring the Bible to life. Thanks for joining me. Please hit the like, hit the subscribe if you enjoyed this. Thanks.